I read about a pastor. For 2 weeks, he preached to a little country congregation in a revival meeting. In that little country congregation, there was no burden for the lost, and in that congregation, there was no effort made to win anyone to Christ. The whole revival meeting was what the pastor described as a daily Gethsemane to me. But before the close of the meeting on Friday morning, a woman said to him, "Brother, my husband died several years ago. I'm a widow with 2 boys. Brother, my boys are lost. Oh, that someone would help me win my 2 boys to God." Later, he went to that mother's humble farm home. He asked the mother, get down on her knees and pray while he went out to the barn. The younger boy was milking the cows. The pastor sat in a box beside him, opened his New Testament, read to him passages in God's good book that tell us how to be saved. He then said, "Son, would you kneel down here and pray with me?" The boy stopped his milking. The son knelt by the pastor's side, said this, "I will take the Lord today as my Savior." Whoop, whoop. By the time the older boy had come in from the fields. He was taking the harnesses off the horses. The pastor read to him those precious passages. He knelt by the pastor's side also and prayed that God would save him. That night at church, when the pastor gave the invitation, down the aisle came those 2 boys arm in arm during the invitation. The pastor said it was a glorious sight and a glorious sound as that mother just shouted and clapped their hands over the public profession of her 2 boys in Jesus Christ. That brother said that the preacher said those were the only 2 boys saved during those meetings, that 2 weeks of meetings. But when it was finished, the pastor went away with a commitment and a resolution in his heart that colored his entire ministry. He said, "I believe the praying, the working, the dedication of the whole church ought to be to one end, namely that the lost might come to know God." And that is what it is all about. And that is what I have tried to make my life for the last many decades all about, that the lost might come to know God. I was today standing in the doorway of an apartment complex, and as I was winning this teenage girl to Christ, her mother was standing in the door listening as I presented the gospel, and she said, "Sir, let me give you a cup of water." She went in and got not a cup of water, but a bottle of water, handed it to me. I felt like she had handed me $1 million, but she was thankful that I was there telling her daughter, that is, the gospel. And that ought to be our end, our goal as a church, as a believer, that the lost might come to know God. That